If you have a story you'd like to hear featured on the channel, then go to mariesfield.com and send it my way. And of course, thank you. I've been flirting, if you will, with online dating for probably the last 4 or 5 years now. And before you start feeling bad for me, it wasn't consistent. I would go on a few dates that seemed fine, and then something would end up happening, or we just wouldn't click. So I would quit, get rid of the apps, and delete my profiles. I would then try again, and unfortunately, the cycle would repeat. But I wasn't willing to give up yet. I still wanted to find someone that I could spend the rest of my life with, so I cleaned myself up and again updated my profiles, ready to start searching. This was early 2022. I guess I was feeling a bit more confident about myself and the state of the world as I went on another hiatus from mid-2020 till close to the end of 2021 for obvious reasons. I had a few matches, some that ended pretty quickly at the chatting part, but others I was actually able to go out with. However, there was one girl that really drew me to her, and I thought I was the luckiest man around when she actually agreed to a date. This girl's name was Callie, telling me it was short for Calliope. She had long wavy hair that probably went about to her mid-back in a copper blonde color. She had soft green eyes that complemented the freckles on her face, but her smile and her laugh was really what did it for me. It was adorable. She had some kind of dumb joke on her profile, to which I had answered it correctly. Already off to a good start when they don't take it too seriously. We talked for a bit, then even video chatted a few times before we finally went on a date. The first date went perfectly. We had dinner, then we walked around a dog park and got ice cream nearby. It's normally here where I feel good about things, but then get a message through the dating site that it wouldn't work out and I would start over. However, Callie surprised me when she said she'd love to do something again. So eventually we had our second date where we went to a movie and arcade, which was a lot of fun. We started learning that we had a lot in common, especially in the type of music we listened to. So when she asked me if I wanted to go to a concert with her for a band we both enjoyed, I agreed. I even offered to pay for both tickets or just mine, but she refused, saying she had already bought them. Now, I had never really gotten this far in the process, so I don't know how long this normally took for others, but this all happened within the span of a month. So I dressed a little down from what I normally wore, picking a band shirt and jeans, and when I picked her up, she was wearing something similar, although it looked much better on her. We decided to grab a few slices of pizza before the show and went to a local pizzeria that was probably about 45 minutes away from the venue. Unfortunately, as we were enjoying our pizza in each other's company, she got an email or a text about an electrical fire occurring at the venue, and until they knew it was safe, all shows would be canceled starting from that night forward until further notice. We were both pretty disappointed because I think we were both really looking forward to it. After moping a bit, I suggested we still drive around the area, as we may have been able to find the band members at a local bar or something. However, she had better ideas and suggested we just go back to my place. This was not something I would ever offer or have expected. The reason should be obvious, but being a guy, I never wanted to suggest anything, and I really didn't have much self-esteem, but she insisted, saying we should make the most of the night. So after we finished eating, we left, stopping only to get some cheap wine, her recommendation, and headed back to my place. Once we got there, I played some music from the same band we were supposed to see, and even put on a previous live performance on YouTube, trying to be funny or sweet, I guess. After we talked for a while, things heated up, so we ended our night in the bedroom. That night was fantastic, and since we didn't work the next day, I was looking forward to spending the day with her. Yet, when I woke up that morning, the spot next to me was empty. I thought, no problem, maybe she got up before me and was in the bathroom, or maybe she even beat me to making breakfast. So I got out of bed, walked past the bathroom to see the door open, so I went to the kitchen and noticed it was empty too. I got a little discouraged at first, thinking maybe she had left, but her purse was still sitting on the coffee table. Then I heard a loud crash and realized I didn't check the spare room, which I had made into my makeshift office. I quickly ran to the room, opening the door, and a flood of emotions ran through me as I saw Callie standing over what was my laptop, holding a hammer as her face was a splotchy, crying mess. When I finally was able to talk, I blurted out, "What the hell happened?" I know, I'm dumb. It was obvious, but for some reason, I still didn't want to believe it. In a shaky voice, she made comments about me seeing other people behind her back. I was confused by this because I hadn't been, so I tried to figure out what she was talking about. She said she noticed my dating profile where we met and saw that I had gone on other dates other than her. However, I guess what she failed to see was that I hadn't gone on any other dates since I went on the first one with her. There were ones prior, yes, but I had 2 more lined up around the same time we met, but I canceled them because I was into her. For some reason, none of this worked for her, or maybe it was too late, I don't know. But she kept screaming about how I was a liar and was just using her. I again tried to reason with her and calm her down, but nothing was working. She snapped and said I would pay for hurting her and charged at me with a hammer. I ran out of the room holding the door shut behind me, hoping to buy some time to think about what to do. That's when I could tell she was swinging the hammer at the door. I let go of the door and made a mad dash to the front door, running out of my apartment in only my boxers. I ran down the stairs and started banging on the door to another apartment, and there was an old lady that answered, and my God, I still feel awful to this day doing this to her, but I ran in begging her to call the cops and trying to explain what happened. I think she was already about to call 911 on me alone. I stayed by her front door, stopping myself from looking around her place, hoping that my pathetic self looked harmless to her until I heard police knocking and calling out. I opened the door and told them what happened and led them to my apartment. They made me stay outside so they could get my side of things while another cop went in to get her. After a short time, it was a small apartment after all, I heard shouting and what I assumed to be people struggling. They finally came out with her in handcuffs. She had on one of my t-shirts that she slept in, but also the zip-up jacket I wore the night before. When she saw me, she instantly became enraged, and they had to calm her down again to get her in the car. They then had me walk through my place to see if anything was taken or if anything else was damaged. She ended up finding my phone and breaking it, and also smashed a picture I had in my living room of me and my mom and my sister. My dad died when I was young, so they were the only 2 people that were really significant to me. Oh, they also found her hanging off my balcony, talking about how she was going to jump. I lived on the 2nd floor, so she may have had some broken bones if she did, but that was about it. Not to mention, it was grass below mine, not concrete. After all was said and done, I think I was confused and disappointed more than anything. I didn't press charges, but she bit the officer that detained her, so they had their own charges on her. I don't know what exactly changed or happened, nor will I probably ever know, but I felt bad for her more than anything. There was obviously something wrong, or maybe something traumatic that happened to her to cause her to be like that, but I think she probably could have used more help than charges. In the end, I just got a cheap phone until tax season and replaced them both at that point. I don't know what happened to her, as she never tried to contact me after that, but I do hope she's doing better. But yeah, I'm taking a break from dating. Again. A few years ago, I decided to try online dating. I had a few passes and a few that went nowhere, but I thought I was finally getting lucky when I met Sarah. I used a site where the guy had to mark interested in someone, and if the girl was interested, then she could message them to initiate. I guess it made for less harassment. I had a few pass me up or ignore me, which was fine. I know I'm not everyone's type, so I marked interested in Sarah and waited. I almost gave up when I didn't get a response for almost a week, but she did finally message me. We talked for a while. She apologized for not responding sooner, and we even joked about how annoying online and blind dating is, and how our friends always pressured us to find someone. I've had a few prior dates where they just talked for a few weeks before they were willing to even meet in person, so I was surprised when she wanted to meet up about a week or so in. She chose the place for the first date, which turned out to be some kind of festival the county over from her. It was like a small pop-up carnival with a bunch of different food trucks and games, mostly for kids. It was kind of awkward at first, as the only place to really sit and talk were these little chairs and tables the truck sat up next to them. We kind of walked around the trucks awkwardly, trying to decide what we wanted to get, when we sat down and started talking a bit more. After a bit, and when the conversation started tapering off, we decided to leave. I walked her to her car, and she asked me if I enjoyed it, and I told her yes. She said she was surprised that I was actually willing to come out here and showed up, mentioning she does kind of a weird first date as a test to see if the date is actually interested in her and getting to know her, or just wanting a one-night stand. That's definitely not what I was interested in, and it was definitely not the weirdest date I've been on, so I didn't see anything wrong with it. So we agreed to keep talking and maybe go on another, maybe more formal date, and went our separate ways. After a few days, she was already wanting to go out again. I suggested a restaurant that had opened or reopened rather recently. The original location burned down, and then they reopened in a different area. It was a local restaurant, so there wasn't another one we could go to, so I hadn't been since it reopened and offered to take her there. She asked me the same thing about how I knew this place and told her that I went prior to it being reopened and moved. We got there, got our seats, and as we started talking, I heard my name being called. I turned around and, of all people, I saw my ex in the restaurant uniform. Our split was mutual. We just didn't really click and have the same goals, so we decided to end it, no hard feelings. We chatted briefly with how are yous, and then I introduced her to Sarah and vice versa. She took our drinks, and I asked about the teas they had, and she steered me away from one of them because it had strawberry extract in it. So I thanked her and we continued on our date. I explained to Sarah that I was deathly allergic to strawberries, to the point that I can go into anaphylactic shock, so I was glad my ex, Molly, warned me. She seemed quiet at first, but then I noticed as the night progressed, she would become more flirtatious and loud and hands-on, touching my arm and hand, things like that. So to me, it seemed like dinner went really well. As we started heading out to our cars though, feeling good about tonight, she stopped me in the middle of what I was saying and said, "I thought you've never been here before." I was kind of thrown off about this question at first because I didn't understand why she was asking it. So I then explained to her that I had been there prior to the fire and them relocating, so it had been almost a year. She then made some kind of comment about my ex working there and how she thought it was convenient that I would take her there. I tried explaining to her that I had no idea she worked there. As stated, the place was gone and I really didn't even know where they were going. let alone where Molly was working. I hadn't talked to her in months, but we haven't been together even longer than that. She still seemed a bit standoffish at the time, but I tried being reasonable with her and also trying to steer the conversation elsewhere. I legit had no idea she worked there and wasn't interested in her or causing any kind of drama, not to mention I was liking Sarah. I asked her if she wanted to do something else, like get dessert, walk around, anything really to just chill, but she couldn't really get past the whole ex thing, I guess, and said she just wanted to go home. I didn't push it and really didn't want to fight with someone I barely knew, so I agreed. I asked her if she wanted to do something again soon, and she said she'll think about it and left. So I went home, slightly cringing at the thought of this not smoothing over and being back to square one. It was exactly a week when she finally responded to me. I messaged her a few times just saying good morning or asking her how her day was, but we had done that many times before and she wasn't responding. I didn't want to be that guy, so after no responses the first 2 days, I stopped reaching out thinking it was over at this point. That Friday though, she actually messaged me back. She said she needed some time to think it over, if I was being honest, and realized that she was probably overreacting and wanted to make up for it by making me dinner. She invited me over to her place and said she would make food. I felt bad and didn't want her to do everything, so I offered to pick up drinks and a dessert. She accepted the drinks, but said she had dessert covered too. I thought, why not? I was getting a free home-cooked meal, so it was the least I could do, but just to make it right, I decided to even buy her flowers. I showed up looking my best, and when she opened the door, I was hit with the smell of garlic and greeted by a beautiful smile. She waved me in and grabbed the flowers pretty quickly and hugged me. She then showed me where to sit the wine, and then we just talked for a bit. This girl had made chicken Alfredo bake just for the two of us. She remembered when I said it was my favorite, and that just made my day. I thought for sure this was going to work out for us. I helped her put together the salads, pour our drinks, and we sat and had a fantastic dinner. After a few glasses of wine and talking, we finally finished our dinner, and she exclaimed that she almost forgot about dessert. Before I could get up to help, she took the plates and headed off to the kitchen, telling me to stay put. That's when she brought out this really exquisite cheesecake. It had chocolate curls on the top and had red swirls throughout it. I thought maybe she bought it until she said she made it. Again, I was impressed. A woman after my heart. However, I see red in desserts, especially cakes, and I have to make sure to ask, is this strawberry though? To which she made sure to explain that it was strictly cherries, and that she had made it all herself to make sure there was no chance of contamination. Again, she seemed to remember the Alfredo thing and was adamant on this, so I trusted her, and we enjoyed our dessert. I took a few bites, and from what I had, it was delicious. It tasted perfect, until I realized I couldn't taste it anymore. I started feeling like I was also clearing my throat a lot, and then started feeling a weird tingling or burning sensation. I again asked her to confirm, "You didn't put anything strawberry in this, right?" And she again confirmed she didn't. I was starting to worry at this point, because everything else had been fine. There was nothing wrong up until I ate the cheesecake. The problem was, when I say I'm allergic again, it's not a small rash. It started feeling like it was hard to breathe, so I told her I needed to go to the hospital. That's when I noticed she was staring at me with just a blank look on her face. So I confirmed, "You did put strawberries in it, didn't you?" And of all the reactions to this, she gave me that same angry look from the restaurant and said, "Well, I thought you were lying about the strawberry thing too, just to get her to talk to you more, so I wanted to test it." Great. She didn't believe I had an allergy, of all things I could have been lying about, and now I feel like I'm about to die. I'm a little angrier at this point and yelled at her to take me to the hospital before I died on her floor, and after dragging ass for several minutes, grabbing her stuff and basically pouting, she took me. Thankfully, it didn't take long for us to get there, and they were immediately able to get me back and under control, but I lost a few hours there going in and out of consciousness, fearing for my life and being angry. After all this, I start to head out, feeling weak and exhausted, and she is nowhere to be found. I checked my phone to confirm this to see that she had texted me saying she had to go back to clean up the food at her place. That's what her concern was, her table and counter, not the guy that she almost killed. I had my friend come pick me up and take me back to her place so I could at least get my car and go home. She texted me the next day asking how I was doing, and I told her I was fine, and she asked if I wanted to do something again since she felt I was being honest and that I earned her trust. Great, all it took was nearly killing me. Guess I can trust her now? I tried to politely decline, but she apparently doesn't take rejection very well, but we never saw each other again. So there's my crazy dating story. Now I am even more cautious about my allergies and have troubles trusting anyone but friends and family that are close. I just hope her next date doesn't have any allergies that he tells her about. Alright, so I have a story about one time a person I met on one of those dating apps was a bit more than I was looking for. Like, a lot more. I will say that I am an avid Tinder user, and I prefer to keep my option open when it comes to significant others. I spend a lot of time working. I have my main career, and I also have a hobby or a side gig, however you choose to look at it, that makes me a decent amount of money. Because I spend so much time on them, I don't have a lot of free time to go out and meet new people or spend a lot of time at the bar scene. Obviously, I am the go-getter, always on the run, no time to spare, target demographic for dating and hookup apps. I also use self-deprecating humor to cope with things, so my apologies if any of this comes across as personally degrading. I have a penchant for laughing at myself a lot, and it makes me feel better about the situation. Laughing keeps me from crying about it, I guess. So anyways, back when I was hard into dating people online, I would swipe on pretty much anyone that I thought was attractive, and if we matched, there'd be the initial awkward conversation, and if they could get past that, we'd set up a time to meet. There were a few good ones, but this story is about a gentleman named Charles, though he was more affectionately known as Chuck. Chuck was older than me by about 10 or so years, and I thought that, because of this, he would be a bit more grown up and a bit easier to talk to. We matched, and in our first conversation, he seemed like he was a good guy that had a lot to talk about. He said he worked at a local library, that he was the front desk person that assisted anyone that needed help. In my opinion, this seems like a rather reserved job, one that someone that has their head in the right place would do. His hobbies were writing and cooking, and he also liked to take road trips to places that were a bit outside local, so a few hours at most. I learned all this in the first conversation, mostly because this guy seemed like an open book. He wanted me to know everything about him right then and there, and I didn't get much of a word in edgewise. I was actually kind of okay with this, as I wasn't much of a talker. I like to listen to others and learn their story. I know, I'm a bit all over the place. I want to know everything about everyone, but not to be tied down with someone long term. The second conversation that we had was a lot more aggressively flirtatious. Chuck basically told me that he wanted things to move fast between us and that we should meet up that night. When he said that night, it was already 5 in the evening, So he basically meant that we should meet up right then. I basically had to tell him that I wasn't at a point where I was wanting to meet up or go any further than a few conversations, but if he wanted to move on and not chat anymore, I would understand. He told me that he could slow it down for me if that's what I wanted, and we talked a bit more, but of course, he was still a bit pushy, sneaking in a, "So when do you want to get together?" every once in a while. I would change the subject and he would ask again in another way later in the conversation. This went on for a few days, a few more conversations, and I basically had to tell him straight up that I thought it was best if we didn't keep going. Obviously, what I was wanting wasn't the same as what he was wanting, and it wasn't going to work out. This was apparently the wrong thing to say, as I got hit with several derogatory comments from him, including a number of slurs, and the things he told me to do were unsavory at best. I basically sent him a "no longer interested, thanks for showing me who you really are," and blocked him and his number. There were plenty of other guys out there I could talk to, and I didn't have time for that level of aggression in my life. And with that, I thought that my time knowing Chuck was over. But of course, it wasn't. Instead, that's where things started to get out of hand. When this had all transpired, I was working at the local coffee shop that my parents owned. Also, at the time of this happening, I hadn't come out to my parents. I would guess they had a feeling I wasn't straight, but we hadn't actually talked about it, nor did I know their feelings about it. I wasn't ready to tell them, they weren't ready to talk to me about it, and we kind of just coexisted. That is, until about a week after the whole thing with Chuck happened. I was working the register, ringing people up, when during a rush, a man came up to the register with a big smile on his face. You can guess that it was Chuck. But at the time, he just looked sort of familiar, and I didn't realize it was him. I took his order and I asked for his name. He replied with, "It's me, Chuck." And I could literally feel the color drain out of my face. Of all the coffee shops that existed, including the much more popular big-name shops around, he chose this one. At first, the coincidence of it was kind of sickening, but then part of me started feeling like it wasn't a coincidence, like he was here with purpose, like he knew I worked here somehow. I hadn't told him where I worked. I hadn't even mentioned I worked at a coffee shop, but yet here he was. I kind of faked a smile, told him his total and said, "Oh, it's nice to see you," sheepishly while pushing his cup down the line to my mom. He just kept his stupid grin the entire time she made the coffee. I excused myself and had one of the other employees take over the register while I ran to the restroom in the back. I stood there for a few minutes in the bathroom and tried to breathe my way through a panic attack. After a few minutes, my mom knocked on the door and asked if I was all right. I told her I wasn't feeling well and opened the door to leave the bathroom when she asked me who that guy was. I tried to play stupid, but she said that after I walked away, he started talking about me to her the whole time she was making his drink, and apparently he had a lot of things to say. I told her he was just a friend, and she retorted with, "He said he was your boyfriend." If I may say, this is not how I wanted to talk to my mother about my sexuality, standing in a coffee shop bathroom, feeling like I was going to puke. That aside, I did talk to her about it, and I won't detail the conversation. I'll just say it went better than I hoped it would. I then explained to her that he was not my boyfriend, just some guy I talked to for a few days, and that I had to block him because he was a bit too much for me. This was a surprise to her, mostly because this guy seemed to know everything about me. He obviously knew I worked there, that my parents owned the place. He knew where I went to high school, what I was studying in my college courses, and he basically told her about days that we had spent together and places we'd gone on dates, which were completely and totally false. He mentioned things that had literally never happened between us, in the 4 or 5 days we spoke, but he was apparently incredibly convincing because my mom thought that he and I had been together for a while based on what he was telling her. It took a lot of convincing, but she eventually believed me that this guy was off his rocker and that I barely knew him. After all this, I took a minute to unblock him and I messaged him telling him that he needed to leave me alone and called him a few names for lying to my mother. He just responded with a heart emoji, so I blocked him again and moved on. A couple days later, I went to get the mail at my apartment and I noticed an envelope with no return address nor postage on the envelope. It had my name on it, then also had a little heart sticker in the middle. I had a feeling I knew who this was from, and I opened it just to confirm that, sure enough, it was Chuck. Only this wasn't a letter. Remember how I mentioned that Chuck liked to write? This thing that he had hand-delivered to my mailbox was a several-page fan fiction of our relationship. He had handwritten a several-page-long erotic story about us, which would have been creepy in and of itself, but he ended it all with a personal note about how when he was done with me, he would discard me and no one would ever find my body. He used those words exactly. When I'm finished, I will discard you and no one will ever find your body. Obviously, I went to the police with this. I told them who it was, where he worked. I showed them the text conversations, and I told them about how he showed up at my work. They took the note and my information, and that was about the end of that conversation. They weren't too interested in this situation, apparently. They said they would patrol the area over the next few nights, and if they saw anything suspicious, they would let me know. I left just feeling incredibly dejected and invalidated about this whole mess. Every single day after that, I kind of felt paranoid, feeling like Chuck was going to show up at my door to make his little fiction a reality by force. He thankfully never did, and I know that's a really bad way to end this whole ordeal, but that was actually where he stopped. I don't know if the cops went and spoke with him, or if he just had a change of heart, but I never heard from him again after this. There was one point, about a year or so later, when I graduated and went on to working in my field, that I did get a card with no return address that basically just said congrats, that I think was from him, but nothing ever came of it all. It was basically just him being a creep, knowing everything about me despite me never telling him, sending me a creepy letter, then moving on. To be honest, I'm actually rather grateful that my ordeal ended in an uneventful way, because I hate to think of what he would have done had he been a little more inclined to follow through. So that, my friends, was a scary ex and scary dating stories. Figured we should probably do some of these, what with the month and all. Got to take the good with the bad. But I know I don't have any personal stories that I can share because I got lucky with Raven. No, Lucas. I'm going to call him by his name. He always calls me by my name. Doesn't even call me Marie. It's weird. 16 years though. Going on 17, so that's nice. I don't have to deal with that, thankfully. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, do give it a like below. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, consider subscribing. And lastly, don't forget to leave a comment on your thoughts, or let me know, do you have any weird exes? Hopefully nothing like these stories. And with that being said, friends, I hope you have a fantastic day, and until next time, take care.